Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's conversation. It's a wonderful, wonderful privilege to welcome Prof Andries Baart and his wife, Monique de Bree. They are parents of the theory of presence, and they are from the Netherlands. So welcome so much, and I'm looking forward to our discussion on presence.
Thank you very much.
So any one of you can start, and please tell us more about yourself.
Okay. Perhaps you would start, Monique?
Well, I'm Monique de Bree, and I was a former pastor in the privileged neighborhood. I think I'm saying it right so. And I've done that for many years. And at the beginning, Andries Baart was the prof who was watching us in what we were doing and how we were doing things. And we had many interviews and discussions, and on basic of our work, he was thinking about what are they doing, and what is working, and how does it work, and he was writing, and my colleague and I, we were reacting on him, and so the theory about the work was growing and growing, and at the end there was a big book, The Presence Approach, and yeah, well, we were very proud about it, but we didn't ever think that that would be a big success as it is now, because we were a little seed planted, and it was about a church, and in Holland the church is not something usual like it is in Africa, but somehow it started to grow and to grow. It was a very slow process, but it was very interesting to see how people in the society took it up and say, this is what we need, this is why I am doing my work, and they are telling it with words which make me grow in my work and give me some spirit. So I want to know more. And so it growed and it growed. And Andries, he was very good in picking it up, and also tried to translate what we were doing to other sorts of work. So it was very interesting to see how it growed and what questions there were, and it started also with us to think about it, that it was not only our way of doing, but it also can inspire other people. And now it's even with you, so I'm proud about the little seed that is growing that much. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. It's spreading all over the world.
Yes, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
It's a kind of a virus, you would think.
A good virus, I hope.
Well, I'm happy in a way that how Monique is presenting that kind of theory. That's what we did. It's now 30 years ago that I became a professor. So this year
Sure.
I'm for 30 years professor. And I started with the kind of investigation Monique is talking about. And so I'm not the one who made the theory of presence. Well, I would say perhaps I made the theory, but the practice of presence was already in the field. So the only thing that I did was discovering it in the most literally sense of the word, to discover, to throw off the cover and say that's what they're doing. So the way Monique is articulating the way we work, that's really what we did. So it was in the practice, as it is in nursing. Some nurses are doing that in a specific way, and they are, so to say, waiting for people who can identify that kind of approach. And then if it is identified, what I did was made a theory of it. So that the big book in the end is just in the part describing the practice of being present, and in the other part it tries to explain how it is how it is working, what kind of effects it has, uh, why people think that is a good idea to do so. So I'm more in a theoretical way interested in presence, but you if you do so, you discover that as a researcher, you have to be present yourself to the people that you are researching on. So I like to be rather consequent. If you are researching on presence, you have to practice presence in your research and in the way you are theorizing. And that's what I'm doing. And it started in those days. I was professor in theology for many years. And after that, I became professor in philosophy. And now I'm professor in social science. So it's changing a little bit. It's always the same thing. I'm very much interested in we how we can become meaningful for vulnerable people. So for me, the core business is vulnerable people. And I wouldn't say helping them, but you could say helping them, but I would say even more modest, how to be meaningful for them. That could be helping, but it could be, well, sometimes you can't help, but you can be there. And that is being meaningful. So for me, I started the research because I'm very interested in how we can do that. So I studied philosophy and social science and theology. I think that it's always the same object. I'm interested in people that are vulnerable or that are dependent or things like that, and how we can assist them, being there for them. And so I made that kind of theory of presence. The book was published after 10 years, the first 10 years of my professorate. And after that, so that was in 2001, after 10 years. And since that year, I published every year a new book on one of the aspects of being present. So about attentiveness, about transformation, about how to educate people in presence, about presence out uh, out of the domain of theology. So, and now I'm professor in psychiatry, and there still we try to be present. So, in specific domains, it's very hard to do it. Very hard. So, if you are talking about the domains of the forensic, for instance, in jails and that kind of thing, but we do it. Or in psychiatry, now I'm on the ward of the very acute urgent need, so that people are very confused. So not the easiest thing to be present for them. It's much more difficult than, for instance, in palliative care. So by looking for I come to you. By looking for the difficult practices, we develop a theory. So I'm not interested in the easy way to be present. But I think that you know everything about it. Your practices are not easy either. But Monique, you want to ask a question?
No, I want to say that the power of the presence approach, the theory, and of Andries is just what he said, that he also as a professor was present with us. So the first time he gave us a report about his thinking about us, it was a big paper bag. We read it and we said to him, no, that's not what we are doing. So he was thinking and we were doing, but it was a part of each other. And then we said, no, 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 no. And he was not amused. And we were a bit frightened to say no, that's not good. But he was the one who threw it away in the paper bag, and he said, nope, then it's not all right, so I have to start again. But I
Okay.
also always think that that moment was the most important moment for the presence approach to be so powerful, because then that was the moment that practice and theory came together. And his theory, we were not easy for him. So he couldn't take a theory and say, oh, it's that, and you are doing like that, and or you have to do like that. He always was thinking, but why are you doing this? And what is the effect of it? And why are the people so glad with you? But what are the people saying about you then? And then think again over and over again and make a new theory. So he didn't took everywhere some things, but he was thinking over what are they doing and why is it working and what is the importance of it. And because he was trying to be inside the practice, he could make a theory from the praxis and not something what was throwing up front. You know, it was from the inside. And I think that was a very important moment also for me. I think that I, as a practice person, was growing because he was asking and asking. Sometimes I thought, I don't know, I'm just doing something. But when we talked, I realized, oh, but it's not doing something, but I'm doing something because I know why, but I couldn't tell. But because he was asking, I had to tell. So he was making my mind growing, and I was helping him to understand the practice. So that came together, and he is always staying doing that. So when people from social work or teachers or people from a hospital or wherever asking him, tell us about the presence approach, he's never only telling the theory, because we always say it's the bottom of all, but you have to think, but how should I do it here? And I have to think about it, you have to think about it, but he is also trying to understand your practice and then think again, but what would presence mean here? So he is helping, yeah, or we are helping each other, the practice and the theory. And so I think that's the most powerful thing in the presence approach, that it was always staying together.
Wow.
Tell that.
Yeah. Yes, that's excellent. It's really wonderful the way that you worked and enriched one another's doing and thinking, and it grew into this wonderful concept and way of doing, way of thinking.
Yeah.
May I ask both of you, I'm so curious about, Monique, about what motivated you to practice in this way, even before there was a theory, but what made you to practice in a presence way? And Prof Andries, I would like to ask you, what made you interested in this way of doing? What made you notice this?
Okay.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure, but I think I was a pastor in a big factory before, and there I had a big, again, agenda from what I had to do. So people there said you have to do this and that and this and that. And I was reading and talking about everything. And well, I had a big mountain on my desk to do. And at the same time, I was at the factory, was a steel factory, And there I saw the people working there, and I was talking with them, and I liked it to be there and to be present there,
Mhm.
uh, because I saw that you are then somebody where people can talk to about what they are thinking about their lives, about their struggling, about everything.
Mhm.
And I always felt that maybe as a pastor I have to be like that. Just be someone for somebody who is searching how to live well, also in a factory like this.
Mhm.
And I liked it. And then they asked me, there was a new project in another city, and I was asked, will you come here and do this? And the only thing I thought, yes, I am in that city because I wanted to be there. And the second was, and I have nothing on my desk. I may start, I may come. And the only thing we knew is that they want us to go to a neighborhood where the church wasn't anymore. So they said, we as a church has to be just there
Mhm.
at the edge of the society, and not where the big people are, but where these people are. And they said, you have, this is where we think about you have to be, but see what you can be there, can see what you can do there. So it
Mhm.
was started with, oh, but what is the neighborhood? And we started to walk around the streets. And when we walked around the streets, we discovered that people were curious about us. So, who are these people? We were walking separated, and people asked us things like, "What are you doing here? And why are you walking here?" And I always told them I am going to work in this neighborhood, and I wanted to know what a neighborhood is and which people are living here. And then people were very generous and said, "Oh, but you have to come in, and do you want some coffee?" Or they started to tell about everything. And that was the start that we thought we mustn't think that we know what we have to do here. We have to listen to them, and maybe they tell us what we have to be here, and then we know. And so that was the starting, and it was I liked it very much. So uh, it's it's very stupid because people ask me, "What are you doing?" And my sister always told people, "Yes, she's doing what she likes, just talking to people."
Oh,
But I thought, yeah, yeah, it is, but I'm also searching. I'm searching from who are you and what are you missing, or what could I be, or what do you think? And it was really a searching project. So not knowing who you are, who you have to be there,
Mhm.
always say to yourself, no, 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 that's what I'm thinking, but do they think? The
Yes.
one day there was a woman who told me when I said I'm going to work here and I want to know what the neighborhood is, she said, that's a good thing. Because there, and she was pointing to a neighborhood home, I don't know how you call it, but they say the people there who are working there, they are always inside. They don't know how we are living. So be on the street.
Mhm.
And that was for me the moment that I thought, that's what they say. I have to be on the streets, in their homes, and not thinking that I must create something, but I must be with them, and then I will see. And so it started, I think. And I think that being interviewed by Andries made me uh, even more conscious that I have to do so, that it's
Mhm.
a good way, although it was not simple to do. And I
Mhm.
always see it with people who are starting and are searching. You have an education and you are taught that you have, you know, you are the one who knows, and they don't.
Yes.
So you know what you have to do for them. So you have to lay it off and say, no, I don't know. They know. And then I know which instruments I need to help them or to be there. But I don't know. They know.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing that.
When I became a professor in 1991, so that's very long ago, that was because I had written some successful books, 5 or 6 books. And when I became professor, I was very interested in people like Monique because they didn't do what I was writing about. So those books were good enough to become professor, but they were not good enough to understand those people. So I was very intrigued by the difference between those books. On the one hand, good enough to become professor, but not good enough to understand those people I was interested in. And that is why, because I'm interested in them because of the field they are active. So neighborhoods, poverty, vulnerable people, things like that. So that is why I was focused on them. But I was intrigued by the way they were doing it. So I thought that's not how I think that you should do it. So it started rather critical, saying, well, that's not the right way. You should do it more, I don't know, more theoretically informed or more theoretically driven or anything like that. But they look, well, they seem to be rather competent. So then I thought my puzzle is to explore their competence, not their incompetence, but their competence. So if you think they are competent, then you have to discover what is competent in a practice that on the first sight is not competent. And that's what I try to do. And then I start interviewing them. So to be more precise, I interviewed them 7 years every month. So it's not a quick and dirty research. So I came back and back and back and back, and I had just every time the same answer: what are you doing? And then they, in the beginning, they start rather offensive and defensive. Who's that? Who's that man? What is he going to do? And they had the feeling, I would say, on good grounds, that academics came to rob them. So they come to steal data, and then they return to their own place. They make an article of them. So that is for the honor of the academic researcher. And they discovered that I was not doing that. So I was not doing the research because I was in need of writing articles. Being a writer is my normal thing. I am a passionate researcher from when I was a very young boy. So I had no problem whatsoever to write my articles or my books, no problem at all, never, ever. So I was not interested in robbing data. And then you have to, as you do yourself, then you have to develop or design a kind of research with the people, with this intentional framework. So I'm not here for robbing them. I try to understand them. And my starting point is benevolence. So I'm very critical and I'm uneasy, always uneasy, but I'm benevolent. It's because I want to understand it in a critical way. So it doesn't mean that I am believing anything. I'm believing nothing, to be honest. So we have to find out. And by doing that kind of research with the people themselves, giving feedback, people who are reading that specific book, they will read that we had feedback sessions in those 10 years, 107 feedback session. So that is taking them serious in every respect. And we had battles, we had quarrels, we had discussions, we had debates, and it makes your data and your conclusion even stronger. So that's not what you should avoid. If you are a real researcher and you are passionate for research, go into that debate. They are not stupid. They know why they are doing things. So it's up to you to ask the right questions, to stick to those questions. No easy answers, no easy thing. So the research in those days were rather uneasy. And to be honest, I do that in the same way until today. So I'm much asked as a speaker for lectures and things like that and speeches. And always I am going into the practice of people that ask me, asking uneasy questions. So for me, all those lectures, and there are many, every year many, I am going into that practice, finding out what they are doing, asking questions. And that's how I am progressing now. And I have left the field of church, so I'm not anymore working in the field of the church. I'm kicked out, so to say. But that's it's no different. So I'm still working there in nursing, as you are, for many years, or in hospitals, or in very other domains, even in education, in schools, or with the police. Even the police is trying to exercise presence because they know if you want to have a safe area, you have to relate to the people there. If you come in with much violence, you will not be successful. So I do it in all places and writing my books. So by now there are 34 books. So, so it's always going into the practice, as Monique said, doing your research there. And I will stress the point of Monique. Of course, I'm reading books, so I'm reading very much, but I am not applying theories. I'm not applying theories. I have a well-filled backpack, and the practice should dictate what I should take out of that backpack. You are in my library, so in this room I do have 4,000 books or anything, I don't know anything like that. But it's not about applying those books. You should have that background, and people tell you which book you need. So I don't like people that are ideologically focused on just one point, saying, well, it's about empowerment or it's about empathy. Could be, it could be, but it could be that we have to think about how to have a fruitful discussion, or how to have a fruitful quarrel, or how to think about loneliness, or how to think about being out of power, or how to handle people that feel tragically alone. So I don't know what I have to think about. That's exactly what Monique is saying. You have to learn that from people working in jails, or working in poverty areas, or working with different difficult people who escape from care. So is that answering your question a little bit?
Yes, wow, thank you so much to both of you. You're giving me much to think about, and also to think how we, as in our team, can rethink and apply what you are sharing now. And I think what you are sharing is already such a beautiful example from both thinking and doing of presence, and how it can be applied. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Okay.
Yes. Would you like to end off our discussion by just sharing some thoughts on maybe a story of a time that you experienced presence and what it meant to you? anything that or anything else that you would like to still share and say about presence?
Okay. Will you start, Monique, or do you want me
I
to
have to
start?
think about it. That's a big question.
Well, if you don't mind, I start. I think it's a very good question. And in all those years that I had students from different universities, I always ask them in the first lesson to say, well, we are going to talk about the theory of presence and the practice of presence, as well. But I'm quite sure you have anywhere experienced presence. So I always, my students, before I started, where did you feel or experience presence or the lack of presence? I'm always on the lack of presence. And they all know. So they have to think about it. And then somebody said, well, when I was on high school, I was in problems and my parents were not listening to me. And then we had just one teacher and he or she was there for me and I could relate to them or I could be confident that I was understood or recognized or things. Everybody gives examples of presence. And they have experience or the lack of presence. Sometimes they say, well, I had a problem and I was looking for help, for instance, in youth care. And I was admitted to the youth care and there were professionals and all those professionals were helping me, but they didn't help me. They were busy with their own ambitions, with their own language, with their own logic, and things like that. And then they say, I feel very lonely, I feel disregarded, things like that. So then they have experience of not being present. And I think it's a very good starting point if people start um, lecturing about presence. And that's the same in your field. Uh, um, Most of us have some experience with doctors or with nurses, and then the same is applicable. Do you have any experience in the field of medicine or nursing where you would say, yeah, he or she was present with me? And what do you mean? And then if people answer, I always start to ask again and again and again, what is that experience? Normally they start with a very easy answer. He was listening. But then I ask, but what is listening about? What is listening about? What is he doing when he's listening? And then they say, for instance, well, he takes me seriously or anything like that. And then what is to be taken seriously? And then, for instance, people say, well, he is recognizing my problem. He is not alienating the problem, saying, well, I know better how to call the problem, or he is not robbing my expertise in the field of my problem. He is recognizing that I am experienced in it and things like that. And then you can, so to say, you are discovering one cover, another cover, and then you come in depth and then say, well, now we are at the core. That is presence about, it's not just about listening, but everybody can listen, but it's about recognizing, really being interested. Of course, people always say, listen, you should be interested or attentive. Of course, you should be attentive. But what is it to be attentive? People think that that is a kind of empathic behavior. So looking into the eyes and sometimes, but then I say to them, I have learned, for instance, from Monique and her colleagues, that being empathic sometimes means not looking in the eyes, but to take people on your bike. And then you are on the back seat of the bike and they are talking to your back as the people. And then it's much easier for people to talk about the problems when they are not looking into the face. So then you can learn, people say, well, I'm listening to you. And then I say, for instance, now in the hospital, yeah, they are in this institution, in this room, in this front, the way we have the seats opposed to one another with the tissues on the table in case of. Things like that. And then for people, it's much easier to talk with you if you walk with them outside in the garden and they need not to look at you. So asking for experience, going into it, and explore that experience is a very good beginning of lecturing about presence. And I think if it comes to my personal biography, I don't know that you are into. I come from a family where nobody was listening. So I think that I am correcting my youth.
Okay.
So my father was a very dominant man. He knew best, and you had to obey. So, and sometimes I think that is the little seed that Monique was talking about in my personal thing. I wrote my dissertation as a philosopher, and it is about, so to say, about narration, having stories, and about listening. And I think that PhD is about my father. So an alternative way to relate. My father was not a bad father, but he was simply not listening. And he knew best, and he was, so to say, he was deciding what we had to do, and otherwise he could leave, and he was punishing him. So I'm not angry on my father, not at all, but he was not. So I think that I'm very much interested in that, because as a child I had the feeling it should be done otherwise. And then in my youth there was another couple, friends of my father and mother, who were very good for us, called the children of the family. And I think they will exercise presence. So I think that I grew up with two portraits, two ways of being concerned. My father was concerned about his children. He was a hard-working man, but that was being concerned in a specific way, authoritative, so to say. And then we had those friends of my father and mother. I've been there for them for many, many years, 20 years, 25 years. And they had a totally the other way. They had no children themselves. We were welcomed there, and they just asked, how are you? And so being educated with those two pictures makes you sensitive of what is doing there. So that is my experience with presence in a more personal way, as a teacher or as a researcher.
I appreciate that so much that you shared that. It brings much insight into you being open to how you were educated and to be curious about that and follow up on that and look at this wonderful legacy actually that you have developed in those seeds growing and growing, and we are learning from you.
Well, but it's a problem too. I was a rather keen boy, even on the primary school. So I have been a researcher for all my life. I don't know why, but I am. I have read books all my life and things like that. And sometimes I think that was my fly out of the family. So being elsewhere and thinking like that. But that's why I studied those different academic disciplines, and that's how I became very young a professor, things like that. And that's my problem too, because exactly the moment that Monique was pointing at, so you get the feeling you know best, which is not true. Which is no, and that's so. In the end, I had, as a young professor, to make the turn myself again, because you are overconfident. So doing 3 academic studies, things like that, and then you think, well, I'm the smartest. I know best, just like my father. And then you have to make the turn yourself, and those people in the field help me to make that turn. And I think that's the best turn of my life.
Sure. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
I will tell something too. I am very glad that Andries said that was a good question, because I do think it starts with yourself. So you have to watch yourself and your life, because I think that the drive of me and of many people who I see who will work with a presence approach, it's always your own experience that you know. Maybe that's why you are being a caring person. You want to be a caring person because you know what it means. But because of the education on schools, we maybe forget what was the point. Why you there was a moment that you thought, well, I think I'm going to work in a carrying job. And I think for me that I also in my youth I had parents that were quarreling a lot. And they at the end they divorced. And I always saw that people around us were, if they are having attention for us, it was always uh, for my parents, not for me. That
Okay.
was a very strange experience, but I always thought I don't have to be there because they don't care about me. They care about my parents and about their marriage, and we have to help our parents instead of they have to help us. So there was, I think, there the seed for me that I always thought I want to work with people. And then I thought, no, that's too big. I want to work with children. And when I started to work, I always went to the children because I thought there's nobody for them. Everybody is doing something else, but not for and with them. And when I started to do so, people always ask me, oh, but that's because you want to be with the parents or you want to be, I don't know what, but not. And I always said, no, I am with the children because of the children. I want to be there. And all the years I worked in that neighborhood, people kept on asking me because they couldn't believe you want to be there with the children. And now at the end, I think I worked there for 22 years, I guess. So the children of the beginning are the parents now. And they are still, I'm not working anymore, but they are still giving me an app, WhatsApp or a mail or a phone call to talk about things. And they're telling me what I have meant for them. And always when I hear that that was what I was missing. I had some people who did that for me, so I knew the people who were busy with my parents, but I also knew on school some teachers who helped me very, very good to overcome my situation. So I knew that it could be possible to be with them. And I think that for everybody who is working in the carrying sector, that there is a point in your life that you know, I knew it. I knew that that was the importance to be with somebody. And when you can realize yourself that and thinking about it, then you also know what it means to be present for other people. So it's a good thing to remind you about that things. And also when I had breast cancer, and at that time I was a very long time working with presence. I saw how in the hospital they were acting with me. So then I was in the opposite position. That was also a good experience again, to realize, why am I happy when she's coming and why am I not when he is coming or she is
Yeah.
coming? So what's the difference? So many people told because Andries did the same, they said, "Oh, but you are doing a research again, eh? But you are sick, but you are doing a research." But I
Mm,
thought, yeah, but I can't do anything else than that
yeah.
because I'm experiencing it now, how it
Mm,
is and how what works and what doesn't work, and it helps me to every time when I'm in the opposite position, also to realize, oh yeah, that's the importance of being present.
mm.
May,
So
may,
you really,
may,
yes.
may I add a little bit? As you can see, Monique and I, we are, so to say, living present. So of course, it's my professorate, it's her profession and things like that. But it's always the same. If we look to television or to documentaries or things that are always, yeah, and we do. So in my um, academic work, I used many documentaries. So 150 or
Oh, yes.
documentaries about all kinds of patients or people and things. And we are always discussing with one another. What are we seeing there? How is it working
Mm,
there? What did you notice? What did I notice? How come that you think the emphasis on is on that aspect, and I think it's on that aspect. So um, I would say presence first is more a way of living
mm,
than of just doing your job.
mm,
But I
And
think, Marentia, that you also have experienced that when you are starting to think and to watch from the presence, that you can't look another way anymore. And we are a few months now are picking up the garbage from the streets. We are doing so. It was because they asked, are there people who want to do so? So we said,
mm.
yeah, we want to. But now we say, oh, but I can't walk anymore without seeing the garbage. I see it
Okay.
everywhere. And
Yes.
a little bit of a loss, but it also makes you conscious, oh, there is everywhere there is garbage. But when you are thinking about and from the presence, you're always looking like that to the things. You can't look another way
Mm.
again. So it's
Mm.
a bit of an infection. You can't see anything else than with that glasses on. You have to,
Yes.
yeah.
but would
Mm.
you say, Emerence, that is differently for you because you are practicing presence too. So I guess it will, yeah, it will, yeah, I would say, making your living or
Mm.
how's it working in your life?
Yes, you're inspiring me to do that more. And I think at the moment I'm still discovering what presence is. Although I'm aware that I should now go over into a phase of not trying to define it so much, but really to live it.
Mm.
And yes, for me, I think this whole lockdown and isolation is still having an influence on me to be working in isolation, although I'm working from home. So um, I'm looking for opportunities to practice presence.
Mm-mm.
Yes, but I do see it. I do see it in my colleagues, how they approach their nursing education, how they approach their research, how they want to be caring and warm and uh, be there for one another. I also think that the way that we are doing research currently perhaps is still that a bit away from who are the people that we are talking about with and yeah, so you're really inspiring me to be closer and to live presence more.
And you all happen to be a mother, as I happen to be a father, and we happen to be grandparents. So for us, of course, you have the professional domain where you practice presence, but you have your private domain too. So, and for instance, if I look to my children, sometimes it's not easy to be present for them because they have a different character or a different interest, or they are things. For me, it's an exercise in being humble.
Definitely.
Definitely, yeah. And then you would say, of course, if you are a teaching presence in that academic settings, what are you doing in your private life? So that's a question for me. And then, and I want to be, so to say, consequent. So if I am preaching it, so to say, I'm not preaching anything, but nevertheless, if I'm preaching presence on the one part of my life, then I should do it in all those parts. That's what we try to do, to be as consequent as you can. But in a more academic way, it's a very difficult issue that we are talking about. That is, for instance, for nurses or whoever we are talking about, you have to be competent, you have to be educated, you have to know the theories, you have to your own practice, and there is the personal factor. And I like to include in our models of professionalism the so-called personal factor. You can't be present just as a cognitive thing. You have to do it in your way, and you have to think about your own character and about your own responses, your own pitfalls, as we all have. So for me, professionalism is including not just competences and virtues, if you want, but also that specific personal factor. And we are talking about the personal factor.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think again, Amarantia, we have to ask you, why are you busy with presence? What is the thing that made you so enthusiastic and that you want to? Because I really think it's inside you that you thought, yeah, that's what we need. So, and I think that's for everybody, that you know there's something inside that you know that is why I am so happy with that theory, because it isn't just a theory, it's something about me.
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't have to answer, but I do think it's a good question.
Okay. Now I definitely agree with you that there's their insights, that personal factor, that inside need for presence. It's there already. Many years ago, I was preparing for a lecture on communication skills, and I then read a book, Creating Confidence, by a lady called Mary Beth Bunch. Her surname now is Dame. I think so. I'm not quite sure. But she said that the two most important things in personal communication is to recognize the other person, to acknowledge that you are here and I see you. And the other one is to recognize that I am here now, to be fully here. It's physically not possible for me to be in another place when I'm here. And those two thoughts fascinated me, and she called it presence. And I read more about that, but it's exactly what you're saying, Monique, is that aha moment of, oh yes, this is what we need. And so I agree that it's already inside. I don't have words for it. I don't have actually even perhaps not aware of that. But when I come across that little seed or that insight, it brings about that wondering and to read about that.
Yeah. But I think that when you realize that, then when you see when I was in my work, there were always people who want to turn me away from the presence, because what's the meaning, and what's your results, and what always questions about the productive side of it. So you have to count it, and you have to say what money it. No, I don't know. But always people wants to turn you away from what you know that you have to do. So the people in the companies are always saying, "Oh, you have to do so much in caring, home caring people. They have to do things in about 10 minutes this and 10 minutes that, and you have to be there with so many people, and always counting, 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 counting." And but that was not why I was going to do this work. So it helped me when I got the words from Andries to be stronger and say, no, I am not going to do that. I have to do this. And I tell you the stories why. So I know why it's important to do so, and not to follow your way of thinking, and what's carrying about. And I think that being aware of the truth in yourself, and it's coming together with the presence approach to give you the words for it, then you can be strong in your work to stay on that road and not to let you turn away from it. So, and in the meantime, it's really snowing a lot.
Snowing now.
Wow.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's really, I see the same thing over my screen. It's snowing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Well,
Yeah.
in this time of the year, it's even more than wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yes, thank you for saying that as well, because I agree, it takes a lot of courage
Yeah.
to practice presence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and then if you talk about your personal aha moment, I would say, as far as I know you, that's the same for you. You have a Christian background, so there is another motivation in it or orientation in it, and for me, it was very, very strong. So uh, the decision, where do I want to be? You may say, I want to be with those people that are successful or that are rich or famous or whatever. So it starts all with the decision, for whom do I think that I want to be? And for the both of us, we are very much trying to be good Catholics, which is not an easy thing to do. And I insist in saying so, that is my personal factor. And people that join present don't need my factor. So that's my personal impetus, my personal motivation. It still is. And so I try to be, Monique is educated in youth care and theology. So it's the same with me, social science and theology. So and we try to return to theology again and again and again. But that is not necessary for people to join or to think. And that's what I learned very much. The best, most appreciated presence, uh, how do you call them? People who are exercising presence are not Christian at all. And they do it in a beautiful, beautiful way from which we can learn. So if we talk about our experiences, our personal background, and you have those incidents and those aha moments, and you have much more. I think for me, it has opened up theology and saying, well, theology is not about the church, it's about people aiming at a specific goal. And then you will see that is, so then in the end, the church is a rather narrow place to be. So doing God in the world. is much, I would say, is much better than doing God in church. So
Yes.
for me, it's interesting how presence is the result of trying to be a good Christian, and then it's turning its back uh, against specific Christian practices and say, well, that's not what I mean. And that's not what it's all about. And it's not what it should be all about. And here in the Netherlands, people know me as professor of theology or things like that. And I'm never hiding that, but I always say you don't need to be that. You don't need to subscribe to the faith. Not at all, not at all. Everybody's welcome. And if you look into the staff members of the foundation of Presence, there are just two are Christian and the others are not. And we are a very good team as it comes to Presence. So that's for me remarkable too. So it started as a theological endeavor. And I don't know, but if I have enough years to live, perhaps I return to the theology once again. I don't know. Could be.
Yes. Yes, I think faith is a good birthing place for being interested in presence.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
But then in the end, Monique said that in the beginning, for instance, for them as pastoral workers, their board was more interested in the mission and in the practice. So they started to ask me, how many people did you gather? How many people are participating in your activities? And then the idea on the background was, now we are building a new faith community or things like that. And you have to learn that it's not about that specific faith community. It's about the quality of your presence for people. There you may contribute to happiness or to comfort people or whatever you are doing there. So you are doing God and not preaching God. And that's the same now in the hospital. It's always about who cares about those people. Who is caring about those people? And for me, it's still the same. And they know from my background that nobody's interested in the theological part. And it's fine with me. They are interested in what are we doing with those difficult people? Are we turning our back to them, or are taking this seriously? For me, that thinking about your motive or birthplace, as you call, that's part and parcel of doing presence. Why are you doing it? Anyhow. So it's for me, very interesting how we reach over the borders of our own life view to other ones and meeting them and recognize them the same motives. Very good, very good.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Thank you so very much for sharing your views and your experiences. We learn so much from you both, and you enrich many people's lives. And this conversation was very meaningful and enriching to me. So thank you so much for that.
But if I may say anything in return, we are learning so much from South Africa. So we are coming there now for many years, and we feel welcome there. And then we see all kinds of different practices with different peoples, with totally another mindset. So it's so enriching for us to see those practices. And then again, we prefer to be in that practices, so not from the outside and saying, well, here is my questionnaire, please fill in or take off those cells and so on. So the way that we are now loving South Africa and its practices and its people and its care system. So we feel very involved. So that's enriching us in a specific way too. So yeah, so I would say it's bi-directional.
Wonderful. That's great.
But it's true. It's not just
Yeah.
because we want to be
No.
polite or gentle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I think you agree, Monique, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 I think it's also a mirror to us.
Mm.
Always rethink and the questions you ask us is learning for us. So yeah, just like we are talking with people in the Netherlands, it's also with people in South Africa, not that we are the knowing one, but we want to think with you. And you are giving us a lot to think about and also inspiring us to, because in South Africa, I think that the differences between people is much, I don't know how to say it, but harder or much, you see it. And in
Mm.
the Netherlands, I think that we are very easy in the Netherlands to don't see it. And we don't have to. But I think the last years it's getting more difficult not to see that there are the poor people and the rich people, and there are the white people and the black people in the Netherlands too, and we are acting um, as if we are all one, but it isn't. And there are always people who are who are the ones who have, and there are the ones who don't have. And although in South Africa, uh, being poor is another word than being poor in the Netherlands, but it's the same system. And I think that being in South Africa, it made me clear that I have to look better in the Netherlands and to be more fightful against all the systems who make people the have-nots and the ones who we don't have to see and we don't have to care about. So I think it's important that we always see who's not being seen.
Yes.
It learns me, yeah, to watch better. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-mm.
Thank you.
And that incredible vitality and resilience in South Africa. So it's incredible. Then you feel in the Netherlands rather spoiled. We easily think that the government should take care of us. And in South Africa, we see people, well, you can't rely on the government. So sometimes they do good things, but you have to rely on yourself, on your fellow citizen or your fellow uh, people. And so I'm very impressed by the resilience. And again and again, so if we stay with people and then we see sometimes black personnel and they take care of the black personnel and then there are all kinds of disasters because of a thunderstorm and then the whole house has blown away and then that incredible starting again. So not dramatically asking for help. Yeah, well, they are asking for help, but if there is no help, they start again and again and again and again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, well, compared to that, we are too spoiled. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy the snow
Yeah.
and keep warm.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Thank you.